Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. Delinquent. Aizawa let out a tired grunt as he walked towards the Juvenile Detention Center in downtown Mustafu. He had hoped that he wouldn't have to do any more visits after spending the morning seeing potential students for UA. In fact, he had already unpacked his favorite yellow sleeping bag after lunch.
Then Principal Nezu called and informed him of an interesting applicant, a juvenile delinquent that was well known in the area if the police reports were to be believed. My head's already hurting, he grumbled as he entered the building. This kid'll be a problem child, I'm sure of it. He stopped at the front desk, a thick sheet of bulletproof glass separating the officer from him. His eyes flickered to the 3 cameras in the lobby, then to the heavy metal door set into the wall beside the window. HMPH, he knocked on the glass until the officer turned on the intercom. My name's Shota Aizawa, he said, I'm here to speak with the JDC administrator, about one of your wards. Yes, sir. Go ahead and have a seat. Captain Tatsumoto will be with you momentarily, the officer said with a bored drawl. Aizawa felt his eye twitch as he moved to sit in one of the wooden chairs that lined the walls. He pulled out the file on the boy and began looking through it. Several counts of assault, truancy, and vandalism. Why do you want this kid in UA, Nezu? He closed the file as the metal door opened and a man with beer guts stepped out. He was dressed in a fairly decent dress shirt and slacks, and his arms still held an impressive amount of muscle. He was bald, with a neatly trimmed goatee that was specked with silver hair. Mr. Aizawa, he greeted, his voice deep and quiet as he bowed respectfully to the off-duty hero. Thank you for coming in on such short notice. Aizawa returned the bow. UA is always willing to go the extra step for applicants who show promise. Tatsumoto nodded. Let us have this conversation in my office, he says, turning back around and entering the metal door. Aizawa followed closely behind him, looking around the long hallways. He watched as small groups of teenagers in gray jumpsuits walked down the halls, being escorted by officers from one spot to another. Several doors lining the walls were open, revealing entire dorms lined with metal bunks and a few metal tables bolted into the ground. Most of the boys in the facility were talking in hushed whispers at the tables, half watching the TV mounted on the wall inside of a metal and glass box. They climbed 2 flights of stairs, showing similar views on each floor until they reached a heavy metal door with a small window in it. Here we are, Tatsumoto said, unlocking his office door and inviting Aizawa in, who noted the window that showed what looked like a rec yard. I know what you're thinking, erasure. Tatsumoto began as he closed the door behind them and took a seat behind his desk, motioning to one of the brown leather chairs sitting in front of him. Aizawa sat down as he once again pulled the file, and while I'm sure you've seen his profile and record, I want to assure you that those days are behind him. It still raises some concerns, Aizawa said. The last charge was barely a few weeks ago in this very facility. The boys in this facility are all volatile, and you can see in the court brief that it was ruled as self-defense. He leaned forward. The boy he fought was attempting to run the pod he was in. He was taking people's commissary against their will. Guess he bit off more than he could chew. It seems that way, Aizawa sighed. His file says he's been in and out of this facility since he was 5? Tatsumoto sighed. Yes. I'll never forget that first stay of his, he muttered, a boy of 5 getting brought in after he admits to killing his father. He shakes his head, self-defense after the bastard killed his mother, and then went for him. He stayed here for a week before the cops dropped the charges and placed him in foster care. Aizawa's eyes widened at the explanation. Poor kid, he muttered, I'm guessing that this is probably the root of the reason that he's been back here since? Partly. The other part is the people he hung around, not only in here but at school. To put it simply, he became friends with delinquents, and followed their lead. Although he's always been respectful to staff, his relationship with others his age and almost all of his foster families usually lead to one or more spectacular brawl. His file says he's been in and out of foster care. Could you elaborate on that? The trauma he went through as a child, paired with his newfound disdain for parental figures, made it difficult for any foster family to connect with him. He's ran away from almost every single foster home he's been in. For a while he was almost exclusively living on the street until he was busted for tagging a building alongside a few others when he was 11. That's when he was sent to a more strict family. Strict? Tatsumoto nodded. The Jones family in Saitama were known for turning problem children like him into success stories. The state believed they would be the best answer to his problems. He burned their house down 8 months after they took him in. That deviates from every other charge he's ever had. Aizawa started. Why would he suddenly turn to arson? And why against that specific family? We didn't find out ourselves until the end of that year when he took a tumble down a flight of stairs. Tatsumoto grunted. The medical staff that we have here found scars, whip marks from belts and switches, brands seared into his back. It took the doctor about 2 hours to get the story from him. Apparently the Joneses were devout Christians, and saw his quirk and resulting attitude as a sign that the devil was in him, and acted accordingly. They're lucky the kid didn't just burn down the house with them in it. What about the last foster home? It says there was an incident that landed him here once more and landed his foster parent in Tartarus. Oh yes, I was actually sad to hear this report. He grimaced. Iro Soren, he became a foster about 4 years ago, and had several smaller children under his care before the kid went to him 3 years ago. We didn't hear anything about him for the entirety of those 3 years until about a month ago. Turns out Soren is the notorious dragon of the West. Of the Caldera Syndicate. Aizawa asked in surprise, how did that get past the background check? It seems the man never used his real name in any of his illegal dealings. Hell, he was the only one in that group that was never arrested until now. Cops found out from an anonymous tip and raided the house. Did he try to fight his way out? Is that why? No, that's not why he's back. Tatsumoto said abruptly. Soren surrendered peacefully, didn't even raise his voice to the officers. The kid tried to fight back until Soren told him not to. The authorities only arrested the kid because he had activated his quirk, but they're just waiting on the judge to sign some paperwork to release him from here. Aizawa huffed. He was resisting cops just a month ago. Is there something different this time around? From what I'm hearing, it doesn't seem like he would be UA material. You don't mince words, do you? Tatsumoto asked dryly. You know, I was once a regular in these walls, and now here I am, a retired hero and administrator. He stood and walked around the desk, sitting on side of it as he stared out the window towards the juveniles in the rec yard playing basketball. This time around I can tell the boy is different. He's no longer looking for and trying to start fights. He has been much more courteous to his peers and has taken to focusing on academics. His anger issues and violent tendencies have been curbed for the most part. Aizawa quirked an eyebrow. What do you think prompted this turn around? In my honest opinion, I believe it was Soren himself who helped him turn a new leaf. Their quirks are similar, very similar, and Soren may have used this to connect with him and train him. Do you think Soren was trying to conscript him? Tatsumoto actually laughed at this. The Caldera Syndicate has been inactive for over a decade. He chuckled, and evidence shows that it was Soren himself who helped turn the lights off on it. The man was, for lack of a better word, retired. No, I believe that Soren saw this boy, and wanted to stop him from continuing down the same path he did. You seem to have an awful lot of respect for a retired supervillain. Tatsumoto shrugged. I have talked with him before, when checking in on his ward a few times. He leans back, crossing his arm, as there. Any questions you would like to ask? His quirk, Aizawa began, leaning forward. It's labeled as fire manipulation. Could you shed some more light on it? Tatsumoto nodded, looking at Aizawa. Fire manipulation, or firebending as he has taken to calling it. He can produce flames from his hands, feet and mouth, and can control fire around him to an extent. His control varied for most of his time here, though this last stay has shown he has increased his control over it. How much is increased? Aizawa asked. During a class on quirk usage he was able to produce flames that were almost cold to the touch. He chuckled. Never thought I would feel a room temperature fire. He stood up fully, staring at Aizawa. Would you like to meet him? Aizawa sighed and stood up. Yes, if it's possible. Tatsumoto smiled and stood. Follow me. He is currently in a segregated block due to the fight he had participated in. Tatsumoto explained as they walked into the block in question. 8 rooms lined the walls, all of them heavy metal with meal slots built into them. He is being pulled off restrictions tomorrow, though he has requested to stay in his seg cell. Apparently it helps him focus. Aizawa nodded as they stopped by a door labeled with a large black 4. Tatsumoto unlocked the door. Midoriya, Tatsumoto greeted as he opened the door. You have a visitor. Aizawa stepped into the doorway, his eyes scanning the Spartan room, from the made-up bed to the simply wooden desk where the boy in question was sitting. Dressed in the same jumpsuit as everyone else, the boy had the top zipped down and tied around his waist. A simple white shirt hid several different scars that trailed up into the sleeve. He was a healthy skinny, with lean defined muscles and long curly green hair. The boy looked up at Aizawa, then looked down. Aizawa noted the papers on the desk and the pen in his hand. Hello, Aizawa began. I'm Shota Aizawa, I'm a teacher at UA. Hello sir. Midoriya greeted quietly, keeping his eyes averted. It's a pleasure to meet you. Aizawa looked at Tatsumoto, who motions to the bed. With a sigh Aizawa steps in fully. May I? He asks the boy, who looks up slightly before looking back down. Go ahead, he muttered. Aizawa sits down and leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I was sent here to speak with you about possible enrollment to UA. Aizawa begins as he watches Izuku begin to tap his pen against the table, leg bouncing as the boy kept looking from Aizawa back down to the floor. You did put an application in, didn't you? Why yes sir. Izuku mumbled, forcing himself to look up at Aizawa. I want to be a hero, to turn my life around and help others like me. I see. And why should we give you a chance? Your criminal history alone would exempt you from most hero schools. Not to mention the notes on your anger management problems. Izuku chuckled humorlessly. These last 4 years have taken a lot of my anger out of me, he mumbles, looking down at his calloused hands. I'm not the delinquent who skips school to look for fights. Truthfully I want to avoid them at all cost. But what's the point of having my quirk if I can't help others? Aizawa nods slightly. What can you tell me about your time with Iroh Soren? He asks. Immediately Izuku perked up. You mean Uncle Iroh? That's what he told everyone to call him. He said with a sincere smile and a warm light in his eyes as he reminisces of the past. All honesty, my stay with him was the best time of my life. He was like an eccentric uncle, giving everyone who stopped by his tea shop wisdom and advice. He was able to teach me how to properly use my firebending. It's what we call our quirks, he explained quickly. At least that's the name of the fighting style. He used it to teach me how to control my temper and fire. He's the reason I want to be a hero. Aizawa slowly stood up, making Izuku flinch slightly. Thank you for your time, Midoriya, Aizawa said. Thank you for speaking with me, Mr. Aizawa, Izuku said, giving a small bow. Aizawa turned and walked out of the cell. Tatsumoto gave Izuku an encouraging nod as he closed the door and locked it. What do you think? He asked as he caught up with Aizawa. Aizawa didn't say anything until they stepped out of the block. Do you have a room where I can make a quick phone call? He asks. Tatsumoto grinned. You can use my office. A few hours later, Izuku was in a daze as he walked out of the JDC, an old yellow backpack hanging off one shoulder and a duffel bag in his hand, now dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans as he followed Aizawa into the lobby. Good luck, Midoriya. One of the officers called out to him from the door, several others joining him. Show them what you can do. Don't let them psyche you out. Can't wait to see your debut, kid. You definitely have a lot of people rooting for you, young Midoriya. Tatsumoto chuckled as he followed the boy and Aizawa to the waiting car. I hope to see you going far. Thank you, Captain Tatsumoto. Izuku stuttered, giving him a small bow as Tatsumoto laughs. Take care of yourself, kid, Tatsumoto said, giving Aizawa a respectful nod before walking back into the building. Let's get going, Aizawa said, stepping into the driver's side while Izuku quickly got into the passenger side. Thanks to Principal Nezu, your release paperwork was pushed through. Aizawa began as he started the car and began driving. Understand that this chance he is extending to you is a one-time thing. If you mess it up, you won't be getting another one. Why, yes, sir, Izuku said. You'll be staying at an apartment that is contracted through UA for students who are from out of town and need a place to stay. You'll have your own apartment so long as housing doesn't require you to have a roommate. This is where you'll be staying until the UA entrance exam. Rent and utility free, and, depending on the student's needs, grants a small stipend for groceries. If you pass, then you will continue to stay there. If not, you'll be re-entered into the foster system. Yes, sir, Izuku mumbled as he looked down. You're free to come and go as you please. Aizawa continued on, but be mindful that this complex is home to no less than 5 heroes, including me. If there's any indication that you're running amok in the streets, then you'll be kicked out and your chance of going to UA will be over. I promise I won't throw this chance away. Thank you, Mr. Aizawa. Aizawa grunted as he pulls into a small, gated, apartment complex. 3 buildings in all surrounding a small park with a pool. He scans an ID card to open the gate and continues in. Follow me, he says, stepping out of the car and heading towards the center building, Izuku quickly following. They climb up to the 3rd floor and stops at the 5th apartment, apartment 34C. He says, handing Izuku a keycard. That keycard opens your door, and the gate. Do not lose it. Why, yes, sir, Izuku says as he unlocks the door and steps in, looking over the medium-sized, sparsely furnished apartment, his hands running over the linoleum counter as he steps down a hallway just across from the front door. I'll leave you to it, Aizawa says, stepping out of the apartment and closing the door behind him. Izuku barely notices Aizawa leaving as he opened one of the 4 doors in the hallway, coming into what was probably the main bedroom, with a simple full-sized bed and generic sheets and comforter, and a wooden desk not unlike the one he had at the JDC, a room all to myself with no one around to search it randomly. Izuku mumbles as he sits down on the bed. This is heaven. The next day Aizawa slowly walked towards his apartment, forcing himself to keep his eyes open as he sluggishly searched his pocket for his keycard, mentally chewing out Midoriya for causing so much paperwork as well as the meeting he had to attend that morning. If and when he passes, his guardianship will be transferred to his homeroom teacher, Nezu stated to Aizawa as well as the other teachers in the room, though I have my doubts he will fail. If he does, then he will be placed back in foster care. Is everyone understanding? Aizawa sighed as he opened his door, stopping himself from walking in as he caught movement out of the corner of his eye. He looked over and grunts as he sees Midoriya running on the concrete sidewalk that circled the apartments, slick with sweat and struggling to keep his breaths even. He looked like he had been hard at work for a while. At least he's taking the preparation seriously. Aizawa muttered as he stepped into his apartment, closing the door without a look back. WVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVW. A month later, Izuku controlled his breathing as he went through his katas, keeping all of his muscles tensed as he moved from one form to another as he thought about the last month of his life. In all honesty, it was strange to have as much freedom as he did. Most of his foster homes had enforced a strict curfew and punished anyone who broke it harshly, but here he was free to stay out as late as he wanted, with only a tired glare from Aizawa to make him think about coming home earlier. It usually worked. It was also unnerving how many heroes were in this area. Even in Iroh's shop, they were situated in a less than nice neighborhood and only saw a hero if a chase moved there. But here, with 5 heroes living in the apartments and several more stopping by to visit, he was hard-pressed to find a day where there were no heroes around. Not that he wanted the heroes out of the area, it just made him nervous that they would harass him, which, thankfully, they didn't. He was also surprised at the attention that Aizawa gave him. For the first 2 weeks the man was standoffish and seemed to hate him, though he did give him some tips to help regulate his breathing when running. About 2 weeks back he had gone from watching him from the walkway of the second floor, to watching him from a nearby bench, giving comments and tips on his forms or asking what he was writing in his journal in between workouts. By now Izuku was more or less used to Aizawa's presence. "You're stiff." Izuku jumped and whirled around, standing in a defensive stance as he stared at Aizawa, who was standing in a tank top and shorts, arms crossed. "You need to loosen up. If you're stiff it'll make your movements jerky and easily readable." "Oh. Right," Izuku muttered as he relaxed. "Do you have to sneak up on me?" "I don't, you just don't pay attention." Aizawa says, looking at the sun slowly slipping down towards the horizon. "I heard you were volunteering at a beach cleanup." Oh, yeah, I was walking by it and saw just how much trash was on it, so I started cleaning up what I could. I guess word got around and more people began showing up." I take it you're not going out there today?" "Oh no, today I need to focus on my katas," Izuku said sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. "It can't just be strength training." "You're right," Aizawa agreed, looking back at the boy. "What are those forms you're using?" "My forms? Oh, it's the fighting style that Uncle made up," Izuku said with a grin. "He always told me that it's the fire inside that makes my temper so volatile, and taught me these forms to help relax my mind. Meditating also helps. But these katas also help me fight with my fire." "It does, huh? Would you like to spar?" Or why you sure TT that's a good idea?" Izuku asks worriedly as he looks around the apartment complex. "It'll be fine, neither of us will use our quirks," he says, getting into a fighting stance. "Okay," Izuku says, getting into a defensive stance, reactively dodging Aizawa's opening jabs and blocking a roundhouse. He throws a few punches of his own, putting Aizawa on the defensive. It ends when Aizawa gets a hard jab in on Izuku's side, making the boy drop his guard and leaving him open to another kick from Aizawa that sends him sprawling. "You need to use a little aggression in your fighting style," Aizawa said. "Passively waiting to counter attacks leaves too many openings. Go on the offense." "Alright. Let's go again." WVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWVWV but unlike the first time where he simply laid down, he used his arms and shoulders to regain his feet and pressed another attack at Aizawa, this time with an axle kick that was followed up with a few roundhouses. Aizawa barely flinched as he tanked the attacks and grabbed Izuku's leg, flipping him over his back and slamming him into the grass. Better, you're actually pressing attacks and taking what advantages you can. But you're throwing caution to the wind and not planning out your attacks. You need to keep a level head in a fight. Yes, sir. Izuku sighed as he sat up. Aizawa looked to the horizon, noting how far the sun had dipped. Let's call it a day, he says, holding a hand out to Izuku, who gratefully takes the hand and stands up. You hungry?
Yeah, Izuku said cautiously, feeling confusion when Aizawa began walking away.
There's a ramen stand not too far from here that's pretty good, let's go. Izuku blinked, then smiled. Yeah, sure, he says, running to catch up with Aizawa. The two walked in a companionable silence until they got closer to the ramen stand. You keep training like this and you'll be ready for the entrance exam, Aizawa said quietly. Keep up the good work. Yes, sir, Izuku says with a determined expression, giving the man a wider smile. Thank you for your help. Aizawa puts his hands into his pockets, staring straight ahead. Don't mention it, kid. Now let's get some cold drinks while we wait for our food. Chapter 2. Trials. Aizawa yawned as he stepped into the teacher's lounge at UA, looking at a few reports that had been given to him by Nezu. Most had to do with potential students who would be coming to take the entrance exam and had a good shot to actually get into the hero course. Hey Erasure. Present Mike greeted loudly as Aizawa walked towards the table. What y'all looking at, Budai? Potential student files. Aizawa says, looking at some of the more promising of the crop. Including that Midoriya kid? Present Mike asked with a shit-eating grin as Aizawa glared at him. I hear he's got a good shot. Same shot as everyone else. Aizawa muttered as he took a seat, his mind going back to the last 7 months since Izuku Midoriya had been given his second chance. The boy had become a well-known figure around the apartments, with few finding a reason to hold a grudge against the boy. Most give him a wave of greeting when they see the boy doing his workouts. It was also a common sight to see Aizawa accompanying him, training the boy where he could. You can't tell me you're not pulling for the boy to make it to your class. I'm not allowed to show bias. Aizawa muttered. Whatever you say. Present Mike said with a carefree shrug as Midnight walked in. What are we talking about, boys? She asked as she lounged back into her chair. Nothing. Aizawa said just as Mike said, his son. Oh yes, little Midoriya. Midnight gushed, I've heard good things about your boy, Aizawa. He's not my boy. Aizawa grumbled. You talk about him like he's yours. Mike snickered, always gushing how well his training is going and how you just wish he would take some time to relax and how he's overworking himself. Mike stopped when Aizawa flashed his quirk, intimidating the loud voice user while Midnight began to giggle. What did Ms. Joke say when she found out she's a mom? Midnight asked, eyes twinkling mischievously. I'm not going out with her, and he's not my son, Aizawa growled. I seems to remember a drunken call at 2 in the morning informing me that you were taking a certain someone home to. I will tie you up and lock you in your office, Aizawa snapped tiredly. Ooh, you're kinky today. Before Aizawa could say anything, the other teacher showed up, forcing him to keep his mouth clamped shut as Nezu stepped in with a skeleton-looking man with long hair. Good evening, everyone. Let's get this meeting started, Nezu said cheerfully as he jumped onto the table. Our first order of business, we have a new staff member joining us this semester as the new Hero Foundation teacher, as our previous teacher Whiplash will be retiring. He's easy on the eyes, Midnight said while licking her lips, staring pervertedly at the skeleton man, who looked slightly uncomfortable at her attention. Yes, his name is Toshinori Yagi, or as all of you know him as, All Might. It was quiet for 3 beats before chaos rang out. All Might. He's way too skinny to be him, there's no way. This makes him even more desirable. Toshinori coughed up blood at Midnight's exclamation, before swelling to his hero form. Thank you for the reception. All Might laughed, before shrinking back down to his other form. Any questions you may have about this form is covered in the packets that were delivered to your offices. For now, just accept the fact that he is on our staff. I hope we'll be working very close together, Toshi. Midnight said in a sultry tone, licking her lips. I hope so too, Toshinori gulped. Now, on to this year's entrance exam. Nezu says, this year we have a special case in the applicant pool. I am of course talking about Izuku Midoriya. He's the first applicant with a criminal record that you've allowed to actually take the entrance exam. Cementos says, why didn't you reject his applicant like the others? Normally I would have, but looking into the boy's history and talking with my old friend Tatsumoto, I decided to make an exception this year. The last time UA allowed an applicant with a criminal history to take the entrance exam, they went villain and attacked the other applicants. Snipes grunted, what if this kid does the same? The boy shows no villainous tendencies, though I agree we cannot be too careful, so the Hero Association is willing to have 2 heroes on standby just in case he tries to turn villain. He won't. Aizawa said coldly, making everyone look at him in shock, with Midnight and Present Mike looking nervous. I've spent a good deal of time with Midoriya this summer, I guarantee we have nothing to worry about. I agree with Erasure. Midnight said, with Present Mike nodding along. How can we possibly give this boy a second chance if we're doubting him before he even takes the entrance exam? We will have to take a vote on the matter. Nezu says, all those in favor taking the precaution and having 2 pro heroes on standby at his testing center raise your hand.
Smintos, Snipes, Vlad King, 13, Ectoplasm and Lunch Rush raised their hands.
All opposed? Aizawa, Midnight, Present Mike and All Might raised their hands. Sadly, it carries. Nezu says, Pro Heroes Manual and Ms. Joke will be on standby.
Aizawa huffed and leaned back. Now, on to the next subject, the sports festival.
Aizawa stepped out of his car, eyes scanning the small park in the middle of the apartments until they fell on the form of Izuku Midoriya, sitting cross-legged with his hands in his lap, one laying atop the other. Around him were the neighborhood kids, who were balancing whatever they could find on the still boy, giggling quietly as they placed more and more outrageous things atop him, finishing with a bucket full of water on his head as Aizawa walked up, quickly scampering a safe distance away as Aizawa glanced towards them with a small smile. Midoriya. Aizawa called loudly, making the boy jump then give a small scream as things began crashing around him, water soaking him as the bucket tipped over. Really guys, again? Izuku groaned as he gave a half-hearted glare to the laughing children. Your fault for not paying attention. Aizawa drawled as he sat on his usual bench. I thought you were meditating in your room since the last time they pulled this? Yeah, but it was such a nice day, he sighed, then looked at Aizawa. You look tired. Aren't I always? He asked, leaning forward. Principal Nezu had a meeting today, concerning you. Oh, is he retracting his offer? Izuku asked anxiously. Aizawa shook his head. It's been decided that there will be 2 pro heroes watching the battle center you will be testing in. Izuku deflated a little. Are they really that worried I'll do something? Apparently. I am sorry that the vote passed. If I had a say in it, then it wouldn't be happening. It's fine. Izuku said, looking at his mentor. I'll show them that I'm serious about being a hero. Aizawa smiled. I know you will, kid. Now come on, we still have some light out. Let's get some training in. Yes, sir. A few weeks later, Izuku stared at Yue, a strong feeling of accomplishment welling up inside him. I made it, he said softly, putting his hands into the pockets of his sweater. I'm here. He took a deep breath and took his first steps towards Ua. Only to immediately trip on an out-of-place brick. Shit. He exclaimed as he did his best to keep his footing, stumbling a few steps before expertly regaining his footing and continuing on. Oh geez, that was a close one. He let out a relieved sigh as he walked, completely unknowing of the girl behind him with her hand raised and a surprised look on her face. It didn't take him long to reach the auditorium he had been assigned. He put his hood up as he walked, trying his best to keep a low profile as he found his seat next to a spiky-haired blonde, who was currently glaring at the stage with his arms crossed, muttering something under his breath. Shitty little. Not showing. Son of a bitch. The quiet grumblings made Izuku sink into his seat a little further, hoping the guy wouldn't turn his irate mutterings towards him. A few moments later the lights turned on over the stage, revealing present Mike. No way. Izuku said in awe. Good evening and welcome listeners to Ua. Can I get a, yeah? Yeah. Izuku shouted, raising his fists, unrealizing in his excitement that he was the only one to do so. Oh, we have a player here, huh? Well then can I get a, hey? Hey. Izuku cheered again, this time a blonde kid with a black streak in his hair joined in alongside him. Well, this is a receptive audience. Now let's get on with the explanation of what you'll all be doing after the written exam, which will be a 10-minute practical exam. You cool cats will be conducting 10-minute mock battles in one of our many battle centers. You will be facing off against robots to earn points. Points will be awarded for the type of robo-villain you defeat. There's 3 of them, and the numbers on them are the amount of points they're worth.
Excuse me. Another light came on, illuminating a severe-looking student who was glaring ahead at attention. You say there are only 3 villain types when the handbook given to us clearly states there's 4. If this is a mistake on the school's part, it is disgraceful and shows poorly on the celebrated name of Ua. He then turned and pointed at Izuku, and you. Stop that muttering. If you're not going to take this seriously, then leave.
Excuse me. Izuku demanded. Any embarrassment or shyness that he exhibited at being called out disappeared. Who the hell do you think you are calling me out like that? I got just as much a right to be here as you do.
And yet you continue to disgrace us with your indecent and poor attitude. Come on up here and I'll show you an indecent and poor attitude. Izuku snapped angrily.
Whoa. Calm down. Present Mike called. Despite trying his best, he was grinning and barely containing his laughter. Examinees number 7111 and 8256, please cool your jets. Any physical fighting will result in both of you being removed from the applicant pool. Izuku clenched his jaw as he sat down. Sorry sir, he called out, leaning back as the blonde at his side chuckles. You're a spunky little extra, aren't ya? He asked as the question 7111 had asked was being answered. Izuku grunted, barely paying attention to the boy as they were all dismissed to the written exams. A few hours later, Izuku stood just outside the gates of his battle center, barely paying attention to the world around him as he tied his sweater around his waist, leaving him in sweats and a black tank top. Hey! The cheerful exclamation shook Izuku out of his thoughts as he flinched and brought his arms up as he whirled around, ready for a fight. Whoa, friendly, the girl behind him squeaked out, holding her arms up in a placating manner. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. Izuku took a calming breath and relaxed. It's all right, no harm, he said, laughing nervously. I'm sorry, but I don't think I know you. Oh, where are my manners? She extended her hand, smiling happily. Ochako Uraraka, at your service. Izuku hesitantly shook her hand. Izuku Midoriya, he says. It's a pleasure to meet you. I saw you outside when we were walking in, you tripped and I was going to use my quirk to stop you from falling because it's not good karma to fall before a big day and of course it's rude to use a quirk on someone without their permission but I assumed you'd be fine with not falling, but then you caught yourself. And I was so surprised and she trailed off as she stared at Izuku, his face a burning red in embarrassment at finding out someone saw him almost take a tumble. Hee, I'm guessing I didn't need to add that part huh? She asked sheepishly, blushing. And not really, he stuttered, but thank you either way. Uraraka gave a relieved chuckle as Izuku scratched the back of his head. His eyes went slightly past her to where a familiar student was stalking towards them, arm moving robotically as he walked, only to stop at the glare Izuku gave him. Go. Everyone looked up in surprise at Present Mike's exclamation. There's no warning in life kids, now go. Without a second thought Izuku suddenly propelled himself forward with his fire, sparing only a small glance back to make sure he didn't burn anyone as he flew across the city, cutting the fire off as he reached the far edge of the city, falling towards a grouping of several faux villains. As he landed in a roll, the voice of Iroh seemed to echo in his mind as he popped up into a basic defensive position. Remember the basics, Izuku, the more advanced katas are powerful, but it is not the mighty towers or weapons that keep the castle from falling, but its strong base. Simple and precise fireballs from his fists and legs quickly reduces the 7 one-pointers into slag. After each attack Izuku returned to his defensive stance, despite how fast he was delivering the attacks. He quickly moves on to another grouping of 4 ones and 2 3. He spends the beginning dodging their attacks and lets out a pain grunt as a punch from one sends him flying, leaving him sprawled on his back as anger courses through him. Your fire is easily fueled by anger and aggression, but this makes you sloppy and prone to mistakes. Controlling your breathing will help keep a level mind and inner peace to effectively use your fire. Izuku lets out a puff of fire from his mouth before jumping up and attacking the group once more, letting his fire loose as he darts between them. Moving from one group to the next until he stops at the end of the street, covered in sweat as he looks back at the destruction he had wrought. Over 20 bots were now practically molten puddles on the ground. That's about 30 points, he breaths out as he leans against a building. Looking towards the main street, a few other bots in his way, with a grunt Izuku shoots off again, destroying 4 more 3-pointers with spinning kicks along the way. As he bursts into the main street he destroys another 3-pointer with his fire breath before he pivots and punches sending a steady stream of fire at a 2-pointer that had come after him from one of the side streets, its internally wiring melting as it comes to a slow stop in front of him. Izuku lets out a breath as he slowly turns around, his eyes widening as he sees a boy with purple hair get hit back by a 3rd pointer. He shoots off and catches the boy before he could hit the concrete. You good? Izuku asks him. Why yeah. The boy stutters out, glaring at the 3-pointer as it charges them. Can you take it? Izuku asks as he jumps back, narrowly dodging a sloppy swipe by the vehicle. I don't think so, the boy says, and without hesitation, Izuku attacks, his foot slamming into the bot's neck and unleashing golden flames into its head, making it fall over. Thanks. The boy says bitterly. Try going for their joints. Izuku says to him, making the boy look at him in surprise. Doesn't take much to fuck up their internal wiring. Clean kick to the joint should at least immobilize it for a follow-up. I didn't know that. The boy said, how do you? Kicks with no fire were taking these things out on the joints. You just gotta be in shape, he said, giving the boy a grin. Now get after it. With that Izuku blasted off again, crashing into similar situations as he went. He gave a helping hand where he could, running distractions on the bots to give a boy with weird balls on his head the chance to stick the bots down, or giving what appeared to be an invisible girl the chance to jump on the robot's back. There's more bots deeper into the city. Don't just stay on this street, Izuku called. Uraraka looked back at him and smiled. Thanks for the advice. She thought as she darted down a side street, running into more bots. Within 2 minutes they were all scrap. That's 30. A few moments before. Viewing room. Well this is a very promising batch, isn't it? Nezu asks Toshinori as he looks at the different monitors. You can say that again, Toshinori says, watching as Bakugo eagerly attacks the robots. Some students will attempt to use their combat skills to gain as many points as they can. Nezu said conversationally as he looks from Bakugo's screen to one currently tracking Iida, while others use coolness under pressure to keep up. And others use both. Toshinori commented, watching Izuku Midoriya tear through the bots. Then narrowed his eyes as he watched the boy help out a few others. Are they allowed to help each other? It's not against the rules, and we do have rescue points to account, but I don't think advice and orders count, Nezu hums as he watches Midoriya help a concussed applicant to his feet and off to a side street where there were less bots, but his concern over the other applicants is worth noting. You're right, he's definitely trying to help everyone he can. Toshinori nodded, Izuku Midoriya. I ran into him when he was helping a non-profit clean up Mustafa Municipal Beach. They allowed him to sparingly use his quirk to cut apart larger trash so it'd be easier to haul off. He's a good kid. A good kid with a criminal record. A member of the school board scoffed. Give it time and he'll start attacking the other applicants when he realizes he doesn't have enough points. I think he's got enough points as is. Midnight laughs. He's destroyed over 34 bots, bringing in a current score of 50. Not as high as others, but definitely within the top 5% of scorers. Nezu agreed. Let's see how they react to the gimmick. Izuku stopped his attack on a one-pointer as the ground began to shake. He looked up alongside everyone else as the gigantic zero-pointer appeared. Jesus fuck everyone, get out of here, he shouted, directing a few slower applicants away as they all ran. That's supposed to be a small obstacle, he grumbled as he scanned the street, making sure everyone was out before he took off running. Ow. Help. Someone. Izuku skids to a stop as he turns around once more, eyes zeroing in on a girl stuck in the rubble. Another girl passed out a few feet from her. God damn it. Izuku groaned as he ran towards her, passing by a confused Iida, who stops to watch him run, his eyes widening when he sees the girl stuck in rubble. Izuku gets to her side in a few seconds, sliding to a stop beside her as he grabs the rubble, pinning her. Uraraka, are you hurt anywhere else? Izuku asks as he strains to push the rubble. And no, but I think my ankle is broken, and I'm at my limit, she struggled out, looking on the verge of throwing up. She was hit by rubble, I was trying to help her. Just relax, I'll get you both out of here. Izuku reassured her as he pushed, straining until Iida suddenly slid to his side, pushing the same piece of rubble until it finally lifted up enough for Uraraka to pull her leg out. Let's go, Iida said as he picked up Uraraka and the other girl and began running, Izuku on his tail. Looking back as the zero-pointer locked onto them. We won't get to safety in time, Izuku called. We will if we keep running, Iida shouted back. Izuku slowed down as once again Iroh's voice echoed through his mind. This next form I show you not because I think you will be able to do it now, but because I know one day you will be able to. Keep running, Izuku commanded Iida as he planted his foot and pivoted around, beginning to move his hands through wide arcs, 2 fingers extended. Are you crazy? Iida cried. Just keep going. Izuku snapped as blue arcs of electricity began to spark at his fingers. To summon lightning is the highest achievement firebenders like us can achieve. It is the purest form of fire and requires the utmost control and precision. Izuku felt the power begin to swell inside of him. A white-hot burning sensation ran through his stomach, into his chest and down into his arms, threatening to overwhelm him as he neared the end of the kata. To use the lightning, your mind must be clear and your soul at peace. I believe you will one day reach this state, and it may very well happen when you save the lives of innocents. Izuku lets out a guttural scream as he jabs his 2 fingers out. Thunder roared as blue tendrils of lightning shot from his fingertips, slamming into the zero-pointer and traveling through its circuitry before exiting out the area in blue light for a few moments until the last of the lightning left Izuku. Slowly the zero-pointer collapses back, crashing through several buildings as it comes to a groaning stop. Izuku grins as his knees start to give out. The timer sounds, indicating the end of the test. Didn't think it would work, he mumbled as he fell forward in a dead faint. Midoriya, Uraraka cried out as Iida set her and the other girl down. I'll go check on him. Iida reassured her as he ran back to Izuku's side. Are you okay? Iida asked as he checked the boy over for injuries, only to find scrapes and scratches from the other robots. He's barely injured, so why is he unconscious? Must have overused his quirk. An aged voice said, making Iida turn around as Recovery Girl walked towards them. Poor dear, but that's what happens when you do something you're not ready for. She tapped something on her phone, making 2 medical bots roll forward with a stretcher. Now, while they're getting him settled, is anyone else injured? As she moved on to help Uraraka, Iida looked at Izuku once again. All that power, that conviction. He selflessly threw himself into saving her and I hesitated. He truly must be a better student than I. In the viewing room, the teachers and various judges were going crazy. Nezu was cheering alongside All Might, who could not believe the display of power he had just witnessed.
Aizawa frowned as he watched the bots take Izuku to Recovery Girl's office. Reckless problem child. He sighed, already thinking of the scolding he'd be giving Izuku on his non-existent self-preservation skills. And in the back, dressed in white and blue furs with a pair of skiers goggled hanging from his neck, Paku Agna, otherwise known as Pro Hero Whiplash, narrowed his eyes at the boy who reminded him of a certain villain he had faced years ago. A dragon of the West.